There's a horror movie named Alien? Well, that's really offensive. No wonder people keep invading you. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the 2014 Christmas special, Last Christmas. Written by Steven Moffat, and is the last story directed by Paul Wilmschmerch. I believe I'm definitely mispronouncing that story. This story is the first Christmas special to feature Peter Capaldi as the 12th Doctor. It is the third Christmas special to feature Jenna Louise Coleman, after she previously appeared in The Snowmen and Time of the Doctor, making her the only companion, I think, that has appeared in 3 Christmas specials. If memory serves me, making her one of the longest companions, actually, coming to think about it. That's really strange to think. It also introduces us to the concept of Santa Claus, who previously appeared in a cameo appearance at the very end of the previous story, Death in Heaven, in the post-credit scene, played here by Nick Frost, a big comedian actor, mostly known for his films where he teams up with fellow comedian actor Simon Pegg, who has also previously been in Doctor Who before as the editor in 2005's The Long Game. So we have, some really great traditions of sorts. This story is also noticeable for starring as well Michael Troughton, who is, this is his first role in Doctor Who. He is one of the sons of none other than the second Doctor himself, Patrick Troughton. He had 2 children. This would be Michael's first, and his brother, at the moment that his name is away from my head, but his brother has previously been in Doctor Who before, most noticeably playing the Professor in Midnight and King Peladon, Prince Peladon in, I believe it's The Curse of Peladon, or The Monsters of Peladon. It's definitely one of those 2, or maybe both of them, I can't remember. It's been a while since I've seen those stories. So this continues on the tradition of the actors who have played the Doctors, their children being within itself the show. And also as well, behind the scenes, there was a lot of kind of drama. Well, I'll say drama. Originally, Jenna Louise Coleman was planned to have left the series at the end of Death in Heaven, with the character basically not stop travelling with the Doctor, as we have this bittersweet moment of the characters will basically lie into each other to in the hopes they can have that the other one will find happiness without them. But because of persuasion by Steven Moffat, Jenna Louise Coleman actually returned for this Christmas special, and originally then this Christmas special was supposed to be her last. And you can tell by the writing, you can tell by the story, but that was the intention, that there were plans, especially when you consider Clara's storyline in this story. However, at the very last minute, in fact, I believe it's at the read-through, did both Steven Moffat and Peter Capaldi both persuade Jenna to stay on for another series. And originally, a character from this story was supposed to be the new companion. However, she didn't get to become the new assistant. She became just a minor character in the story, following a line of other characters that were meant to be companions, but sadly, due to commitments or circumstances, weren't allowed to, and became a one-off character in the story. Now, I don't think I need to explain the... I usually do like going by the mainstream opinion of the story before I get into my own. But I think it's safe to say that every person who has seen the story just downright hates it. It's a story that's not well loved. It is considered by many as one of, if not the worst Christmas special, and one of, if not the worst Doctor Who special of the revived era, and one of, if not the most worst episodes of the entire series. Worse than Time in the Rani, The Twin Dilemma, Love and Monsters, Fear Her, Idiot's Lantern. I can't think of the rest. I can't think of others on the top of my head. But In the Forest of the Night, yeah, this has a bit of a reputation for being a not so good story. But yeah, but does it really deserve that hate? Well, we kick off the story with Clara being introduced to Santa. And right off the bat, this story has a massive tone issue. Because main part of this narrative is Clara dealing with the death of Danny Pink from the previous story. After she lied to the Doctor, she's basically living on her own and is still mourning the death of her loved one. And she comes out of her bed after hearing something on the roof, and she gets introduced to two elves and Father Christmas. And this story, like, one of the worst things about the story is that it tackles so much dark themes. There's these horror elements to the story, but Santa Claus is in it. And I'm not saying Santa Claus can't work in Doctor Who per se, but remember, Series 11, the Capaldi era, was teased to be a much more darker, much more serious version of Doctor Who. And I think having his first Christmas special, the one with Santa, it just... You see? Now, Nick Frost, he's great at playing these comedic characters, and I like how he has this kind of persona. He has this kind of more down-to-earth, much more realistic character. But Santa Claus, nothing Santa-y appears in his character in this story. He's miscast in the role, or at least the way he's portraying it here. The exceptions of some scenes where characters ask him about how how the physics of Santa, shall we say, like how does he get over in one night, how does he get all the toys in the bag, how do the reindeers fly and stuff, and he answers with these really silly, quirky questions. Apart from that, this could have been a completely just a normal character, or a completely different character other than Santa Claus, and you wouldn't have any different. Like the idea of Santa and the ideas of these elves, one of them played by Dan Starkey, making his only role where he's not in heavy makeup, and I believe as well it's the only time in the main series anyway where he's not a Sontaran. I could be wrong. I know he's definitely played other characters in Big Finish, but whether he's played other characters in the revived era of the Doctor Who, I can't remember per se. But this is the only time where we get to see his actual human face per se, even though he's playing an elf. So he does have pointy ears, though it's not well noticeable. Though he does get some really good laughs in this story. The elves do get some laughs, but they have no character. They're just there as comic relief as well as Santa, and their plot lines is incredibly disjointed from the rest of the story. As right at the start of the story, then after the Doctor and Clara reunite, and the Santa actually kind of threatens the Doctor per se. They find themselves, the Doctor and Clara go to a base in the North Pole where there's this base who, for reasons which they all explain. It's a long story why their base has been set up. They've encountered these, I can't remember the real names, but they call them dream crabs. Face-hugger-like creatures which attach to yourself onto your head, and they basically put you in a dream state, make you happy, make you enjoy a sleeping state as they kill you, as they eat off your brainwaves, eat off your energy per se. So as they're killing you, you're in a dream state. I do like the little edit of you see the dreamscape, you see the dream, you actually kind of see them on their faces, and then you have these explosions, and then Santa comes in, and it's really, you know, it does kind of work when you think about it retroactively. What happens in the story? Basically, it's revealed that spoiler warning, that scene is actually set in a dream per se. Later on in the story as well, early on in the story I should say, the Doctor and Clara, they're basically trying to distract themselves, because these creatures, they feed off third perception viewpoints. So say now you're thinking of them and you see them, they see because you see them, and they can hear because you hear them, and they think because you think them. So the way to stop them is to not think about them, not perceive them. And what this story does poorly is it makes these rules for these creatures, but rarely does it stick to them. For the majority throughout the entire story, the entire episode, I'm just constantly screaming to the TV, you're thinking about them, you're talking about them constantly. Why aren't they now attacking you? Why aren't they killing you? There is a reason by the end of the story of what is actually happening and why. But it does kind of feel like Stephen Moffat kind of wrote this story, realised that it made no sense, and then kind of made an explanation as to why it makes no sense later down the line. Now, speaking of, I don't want to bog this story down in the technicals, because we could rant about how poorly the story is structured in a plot or a convenience sake. Let's talk about character. Because the last time we left off with Clara and the Doctor, they both separated, lied to each other so that they can spare the other one's feelings and emotions. The Doctor told Clara that he found Gallifrey, despite him not. He went to the coordinates, he found empty space, and he left that scene angrily smashing at his TARDIS, whilst Clara, after being told that the bracelet that was holding Danny could bring him back to life, Danny actually refuses and actually takes the small boy that he had killed during his time as a soldier into the real world, back to reality. And so, from Clara's point, Danny is dead, but Clara tells the Doctor that he came back and they've been living a normal life. And you can tell that this will probably bring into some confrontations, and the realization of these characters, and them lying to each other, and this pain and this kind of strange relationship they're now developing would play into a big aspect of their story, into their characters in this adventure, right? It gets the resolution of them lying is in one scene, and from the Doctor's point of view, and for him on Gallifrey, never brought up again. The story mainly takes the point of Clara and her pain from Danny Pink. And though the story does a great job, because halfway through the story she gets a face hugger, a dream crab on her face, and she basically is put into this imaginary world where she is living happily in this big house with Danny Pink, alive and well in Christmas, and the Doctor basically has to put himself in the dream to wake her up. Now, Paul Wilsmish, again, sorry if I'm butchering that name, he's a very competent director. I've stated before in stories like Kill the Moon, Mummy on the Orient Express, he has a very strong, competent director. And here he does some really great jobs. Some of my favourite shots are in with Clara and the chalkboard, and she's swiping it, and it's like, you are dying, dreaming, you are dying, dreaming, wake up, or something like that. And Clara looks around, and the camera like warps as we see this chalkboard like growing in the room, as we hear Danny calling to Clara. And there's some really great horror shots, bringing back elements from Mummy on the Orient Express. He's very good at directing horror. I really like that scene with Clara's hiding underneath the table, and you just see the crab crawling on the top of the table, and Clara's trying to distract herself. That's some really inspiring work of directing. However, I do feel like some bits here go against the narrative. For example, let's talk about that dream sequence again. Let's talk about the scene where Clara is at the chalkboard, and we see then Danny call to Clara. This is a dream sequence, so the only person real in this scene is Clara. Danny isn't real. It's just a construct in Clara's imagination. And to get that concept across in the story, you would presumably and benefitedly not show Danny in any scenes that Clara can't see Danny. So why then, in that scene, do we get shots from Danny which cannot be preserved by Clara? Because that goes against the whole dream concept. It almost implies that Danny here is actually real. And there's some really poor directing choices throughout the episode, and it's a really big shame, because I think Will Schmersh has a great eye for a visual taste and a visual perspective. However, maybe time constraints, maybe he didn't get time to think about the story per se, or maybe he just thought, it's a Christmas story, let's just have a fun, let's just film whatever, and just have a ball with it. But it's not as competently directed as his previous two stories. So it is kind of a shame that this would be his last directing story. And I think as well the script doesn't really help him for it. At one point, the Doctor tries to get into Clara's dream by putting a facehugger on himself. And you'd think it'd be this strange, immersive reality bending when the Doctor's trying to get Clara to basically realise she's in a dream. But the Doctor kind of puts himself in the dream, and then like literally the next scene, Clara gets a knock on the door, opens the door, and the Doctor's there. And he's like, it's not real, right? You have the concept of dreams in a show which is its main premise, its main point of view, its main idea as a franchise is just be creative. It feels like a complete waste. This does lead into one of the best scenes in the story, in which Clara, she really doesn't want to leave this place. She wants to actually stay. She might even want to die, knowing that Danny is dead in real life, and she can stay in this dream with this fantasy version of Danny. But the Danny here, who Clara can visualise so well, actually knows that Danny not only knows that he's himself as a dream, but would want Clara to wake up and live and survive in the attempt that, in the hopes that, she will survive this and live a long and throwful life. I do really like that scene, even though you could have, I think it would have been a much more interesting idea if, because Danny is part of Clara's dream, if Danny didn't want Clara to leave, and he struggled with the concept that he is part of the dream, per se, and the Doctor and Danny have to basically pull for Clara's soul, per se, that would have been much more interesting. In fact, this one little concept of Clara being stuck in this dream where her dead boyfriend is alive and the doctor's basically got to help her with the grieving process. That would have seemed like such a brilliant episode, a brilliant idea, and actually would have tackled a really dark theme for Doctor Who, which I think would be very appropriate when you don't have certain loved ones around for Christmas because they've passed away. And it seems like something that Doctor Who was eagerly going for. Like I said, the darker concept. Last story did deal with the concept of death, and brought about a really disturbing aspect of Doctor Who canon. So it's not like this show hasn't gone that route. But then we have Santa Claus! A story about Clara grieving about her loved one is a story about Santa Claus more than it is about that. This one idea seems like it's so like a diamond in a pile of poop. Speaking of poop, let's talk about the supporting cast. Most of them I can't even name. The only reason I even remember Michael Troughton's character's name, Professor Albert, is because he's played by Michael Troughton, and I looked it up. Other characters, just going from this episode, I can't really remember, apart from Shrona, who was the character who was supposed to be the new companion, played by Frey Malsey. Now, she's a character who has this kind of potential about her. I like this. She's the more... she's not the smartest one there, but she's also the more grounded. She's the more down to earth. She's the one that questions more about Santa. She basically spends most of the runtime in the story just questioning Santa about like the logistics of him. So she's much more grounded into the reality. Although when we first get introduced to her, she's basically going into the room with the dream creatures for no reason. Like, we never learn what she was trying to do there. Like I said, the story does have an explanation of why everyone does stuff strange out of concept and doesn't really make much sense. Which again just feels like Stephen Moffat realising that his scripts makes no sense and then working around it. And in one of her introductory scenes, she's listening to Slade's So Here It Is, Merry Christmas, everybody's having fun, whilst dancing with her eyes closed, and she's doing like thing. It's embarrassing, and I feel really bad for Frey, because she sounds like a really lovely person and a great actress here. She was the character that was originally supposed to be the new companion before Jenna Louise Coleman decided to stay on for the series. And I feel like if the character was to go forward, especially when she ends off at this end of the story, I think in the final scene, I was really interested in her in that one scene at the end of the story. But apart from that, she just... It's just... There's not really much to talk about other than she has some really dumb lines, some really dumb moments, and some scenes just outright baffling. There's also there's two other female characters. Also, I forgot to mention Albert, Michael Troughton's character. He gets first introduced by Shrona basically saying that Professor Albert tried to touch her up whilst they were studying, and Albert's just like, I was comforting her. Hooray! You made that character super unlikable. Hooray! I hate these people. And also there's these other two women who I honestly can't tell you anything about them. There's a scene where the Doctor seems to get really nice and along with one of them. Well, I honestly can't remember which one it was, and it kind of teases like the Doctor's like, "Ooh, you would be. I like you. You're clever. You ask the right questions." But she asks any normal questions anybody in this situation would have asked. So it feels like Stephen Moffat pointed to himself. It's like, look how amazing, look how great I am. I made these characters say all the right questions, and the Doctor's pointed it out because he embraces smartness. It's just so it's just so Stephen Moffat going, look at me, I'm clever. And the Doctor basically realizes something strange, something odd. How basically everything doesn't make much sense. How, you know, Santa Claus is around to save the day, and all of our characters are getting these pains in their heads, which the Doctor basically explained earlier on in Clara's dream, that it is actually the crab monster eating their brain, like an ice cream pain at the side of one side of your head, and all the characters there are suffering it, even the Doctor. And the Doctor basically reveals, spoiler warning, that they didn't actually survive the attack earlier on in the episode, just before Santa arrived at the North Pole base. They were all actually dreaming, so they've all got to wake up and realise that they are in a dream. I do kind of like that scene where they open the books and they read a word and it's all different, even though it's supposed to be the same word on the same page. I do really like that scene. However, later Doctor Who stories will play a very similar role, a similar idea, where they basically have this kind of strange coincidence or anti-coincidence, I suppose you could call this, to realise that the world that they're in is non-real. And it is done so much better in other stories that retroactively it takes away from this story. Even though it's not really much to say about this story, because it's kind of unique and kind of cool for this story. But later on, stories do it much better, to the point where it just completely sidelines this story. And our characters all wake up, and the Doctor basically is like, come on, okay, I'm going now. I'm going to take you home, and then we will leave. And because of something, he basically realises, because Clara found Santa, and the Doctor also saw Santa prior to them going to the North Pole. The Doctor realises that they're still in the dream. In fact, the North Pole, this area, never actually existed. They didn't actually leave the dream world at all. This entire thing is a dream world. And Santa then comes to save the day. They go riding off, and Santa actually seems even though he's part of this dream world, he actually does want to help them. Apparently Santa is a representation of all their consciousnesses coming together on Christmas Day on the North Pole to try and help them escape the dream-weary environment. And basically we see all our characters like slowly wake up. We see that one of them, the older woman, in the real world, she's actually in a wheelchair, and her granddaughter calls her. We see the other one I can't remember the name of. She just wakes up in her bed and that's it. Shrona is the only one that actually gets something really interesting here. And this is the scene I was on about, that scene on the sleigh. Though we have them really cringy moments where the Doctor is just enjoying riding a sleigh, which seems so out of character for the 12th Doctor. It seems so ridiculous, so silly, but I just couldn't take it seriously. But I do like Shrona's reaction in here, because she basically realises that, you know, everybody's waking up and they're going to get up. And she's basically she doesn't want to leave per se, and she's just like, right, we'll stay in touch, you know, we'll wake up and we'll like contact each other's phone numbers and we will communicate, we'll keep in contact with each other. And you kind of slowly get this feeling that she doesn't want to leave anybody. She doesn't want to lose this bond that she has with these people throughout the story. And when she wakes up, you can get she wakes up in like an untidy flat on her sofa, and she's just sitting there with a piece of paper in her hand of like stuff to do on Christmas, seemingly enjoying Christmas alone. And that's just a really sad ending. And that is kind of bittersweet. I do actually kind of like that in terms of story plot, because, you know, it does remind you that not everybody is having such a great Christmas. But our characters, the Doctor and Clara, never learn about this. which gave this sad pathos to it. And I do really like that scene. I do really like that idea, and I wish that the character come forward again so we can explore that element a bit more. But it is a shame that that's just it, and the rest of it doesn't really make up for the fact that throughout the story the character just wasn't that interesting. And Clara actually refuses to wake up as the Doctor wakes up into the dream cab world, and he goes into his TARDIS in the real world, wakes up and finds Clara, but she, after waking up, is an elderly old woman. And there's this scene where Clara's kind of like explaining her life for 80 years without the Doctor, and the Doctor's just talking to her as if she hasn't changed a day, like nothing's ever changed. And Clara's just like, are you really, can you really see nothing, no different? And the Doctor's like, no. He puts this hat on her, and she has, and she appears young again. And there's kind of this bittersweet moment, and it seems like a really great way to end a character, where the Doctor reunites with Clara after so many years, and they can finally say goodbye properly. They can finally, even though for the Doctor it's kind of like there was a missed opportunity, we lied to each other, and we, even though, like I said, that doesn't actually get mentioned, but you can see it as such, as the Doctor go in, right, all that time wasted, we could have travelled together, but because of this lie. But Clara, she's happy now. She's through this adventure, she's kind of relieved about her pain from Danny Pink and stuff. And that would seem like another great ending to add on to her great ending in Death in Heaven. Then Santa walks in. We have basically a repeat of the Doctor waking up, going to Clara, and the crab falls off her head, only now to reveal that Clara is now still young. All that stuff about her being in a dream, all of her being old was part of the dream, as the Doctor asks Clara to join him again in an adventure through time and space, leaving the story with Clara returning to the TARDIS team. And that is Last Christmas. Overall, this was painful. This was not a good experience. Every moment, every second of this, I wanted to gouge my eyes out. Sure, there's some really great directings in certain scenes by Paul Welchmersh, who also did some great work previously. Jenna Louise Coleman and Peter Capaldi are fantastic as always. And though I think Nick Frost is completely miscast in the story, I feel like he is having a lot of fun. Also, as well, I will admit, the elves did get a laugh from me. However, the story has no idea whether it wants to be a dark, cynical horror adventure or a silly, romantic dream adventure featuring Santa Claus and all of these weird, strange, quirky environments. And the two ideas clash so hard, clash so untidily, with uninteresting characters, really poorly executed scenes, and rushed concepts, that Last Christmas, I can totally see, and I agree that it is one of, if not the worst, no, not the worst, but it's one of the worst Doctor Who stories of all time. And that's a real bummer. That's a real shame. And 2014 Christmas was a bleak 2014 Christmas. So, that was Last Christmas. So join me next time, where the Doctor and Clara must reunite once more as they get sent on a mission by Missy, as the Doctor knows that he's about to die, as something from his past is catching up with him, as we go to the planet Skaro and we get reintroduced to the Daleks and Davros. So join me next time for The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar. We're also talking about the two prequel and the Doctor's Meditation. So join me next time on the Doctor Who Marathon, and I'll see you guys later. Ta-ra.